Here we have a SAT math problem. Okay, let's go to the question. The distance between two parallel lines is defined as the length of the perpendicular segment between them. What is the distance between y equals to x and y equals to x and 84? Here we have two linear equations, y equals to x and y equals to x and 84. Okay, let me write them. Okay, here y equals to x and 84. Both the linear equations are in slope intercept form. That is y equals to mx positive b. And here in the first equation, the coefficient of x is 1 and this 1 represents a slope of this line. So the slope of the first line is 1. In the second equation, the coefficient of x is the same 1. So the slope of this line is also 1. Since both the lines have the same slope 1, these two lines are parallel. And now we have to get the distance between these two parallel lines. Okay, now let me draw two parallel lines over here. Let me do it. Here one line, the other line is over here. Here I have drawn two parallel lines. Okay, now let me draw a perpendicular line segment between these two parallel lines. Let me draw it. Okay, here. So the red color line segment I have drawn over here is perpendicular to both the parallel lines over here. So the length of this perpendicular line segment between these two parallel lines represent the distance between the two lines. Okay, now I'm going to write the equations of these two parallel lines in general form. So general form means we'll have everything on one side of the equation and the other side will have 0. That is ax positive by positive c1 equals to 0. So this is the equation in general form of a line, and this is the equation we have for this line. Okay, now let's write the equation for this line in general form. Then we have ax positive by positive c2 equals to 0. Here I have written the equations of two parallel lines over here in general form. Usually the equations of two parallel lines in general form will differ only in the constant terms, that is c1 over here, c2 over here. Otherwise we'll have the same coefficient for x and same coefficient for y. Okay, when we have the equations of two parallel lines in general form, there is a formula to get the distance between the two parallel lines. That is to get the length of the perpendicular line segment we have between the two parallel lines over here. So what is the formula? That is d equals to absolute value of c1 negative c2. That is, we have to get the positive difference of the constant terms in the two equations. It has to be divided by square root of the coefficient of x has to be square, that is a square, and the coefficient of y has to be square. So this is the formula we have to get the distance between the two parallel lines. For that we need both the equations in general form. But here both the equations are in slope intercept form. Okay, now let me write each equation in general form. For that let me subtract x from both sides of this equation. When I do so, this positive x, negative x will cancel out. Then I'm getting negative x or positive y equals to 0. That is, we have everything on one side of the equation and the other side we have 0. Now let me do the same thing in the second equation. Let me subtract x from both sides of this equation and also add 4 to both sides of this equation. Then this negative 4 positive 4 will cancel out. Positive x negative x will cancel out. I am getting negative x or positive y positive 4 on the left side. On the right side we have 0. Okay, here I got both the equations in general form. Now let me write the formula to get the distance between the two parallel lines. That is d equals to absolute value of c1 negative c2 divided by square root of a square positive b square. Okay, here c1 is a constant in the first term. Actually, there is no constant in the general equation of the first one. So because we have x term and y term, there is no constant. So then the value of c1 is 0, negative, and c2 is a constant term in the second equation. The constant term in the second equation is just 4. We can plug in 4 for c2 divided by square root of a is the coefficient of x, and that is same in both the equations. And the coefficient of x in both the equations is just negative 1. So we can take negative 1 the whole square, positive. B is the coefficient of y, that is also same in both the equations, that is 1 square. Okay, here absolute value of 0 negative 4 is absolute value of negative 4 divided by square root of the value of negative 1 the whole square is just 1, and the value of this 1 square is just 1. Absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4 divided by square root of 2. Okay, here the denominator is an irrational number. To rationalize the denominator, I have to multiply both numerator and denominator of the fraction by square root of 2. When I do so, I am getting 4 times square root of 2 in numerator. When I multiply the square root of 2 and square root of 2 in denominator, I am just getting 2. Here 2 goes into 2 1 times and 2 goes into 4 2 times. I am getting 2 times square root of 2. Okay, here I got the distance between the two lines over here. That is 2 times square root of 2. We find this 2 times square root of 2 in answer choice C. The correct answer choice for this question is C.